Well, we made it. I wanted to get up here in time to show you the sun coming up over the East Bay, and there it is. And behind me is Loma Alta. This is a little community of Sleepy Hollow down below where I live, and I'm just above my little boy's school. It's the morning of Earth Day, and 50 years ago today, I was helping organize the first Earth Day on the campus at the University of Missouri at Columbia. And it was my freshman year, spring of my freshman year. It's kind of the freshman year for the environmental movement, come to think of it. Lot going on that day. My friend, later to be a friend, Dennis Hayes and Gaylord Nelson, they were organizing this first big national effort. It eventually became global. So I wanted to bring you up here to a place where I mountain bike all the time and give you a few thoughts about Earth Day from 50 years of perspective. It's been a glorious, privileged ride to be able to think about and work on these issues. I got interested in high school primarily because I liked the way environmentalists thought. I liked the way they wove together different disciplines, different ideas. I read Barry Commoner early on, The Closing Circle. I read Paul Ehrlich, The Population Bomb, my senior year in high school, and wrote about them, wrote essays about their work. And then when I went to the University of Missouri, I just continued thinking somehow I would be an environmentalist, which was for me at the time just about a way of thinking, of making connections. Of course, in the spring of 1970, we were all involved. Most of us were involved in war protests. We were in Vietnam. We didn't know when that was going to end. And the environmental movement came along and kind of caught us all by surprise, I think. It was a different kind of experience than the war protests because there was a joyfulness about it. And I think that joyfulness is something that's easy for us to forget. I still feel it, but I have to sometimes conjure it up just because things are pretty tough right now. Not just because of the COVID virus, not just because of the COVID disease and coronavirus, not just because of the Trump administration and how they're pillaging environmental law and regulation. Those are terrible things. I mean, looking back with 50 years perspective, it feels to me like we've got an awful lot more work to do ahead of us than we've accomplished so far. And it's been amazing to be part of the environmental movement over these decades. I started lobbying back in the 1970s and early 1980s. That was a time when we were passing environmental laws every few years. Sometimes we'd have 2 or 3 major bill signings, Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Safe Drinking Water Act, on the President's desk in the space of a single Congress, a 2-year period. So those were sort of glory days for passing environmental laws and starting to build the infrastructure that we've needed to protect the environment. But things are very, very different now. I look back over the half century, that's hard to say, and I see cause for concern, but even more cause for hope. So I'm looking down now on my little boy's school. Let me see if I can manage to capture it for you. It's sort of down there. And during the day, my wife and I often marvel that when we hear the voices coming up from the playground, it's just a sense of such joy, and we like to think we can kind of pick out Cal's voice amongst them. But now he's heading off to middle school, and that'll be next year. He's, at the kitchen table in school right now with Mom. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I don't know what the sounds coming up from the playground will mean. It's a transition, right? It's a change. And I worry about the world that he's inheriting. I worry that I didn't do a good enough job. You look around here, You see all that open space? About 50% or more of Marin County is open space. And you know why? Because people here, going back many, many decades, but in particular since the 1960s, they made it their business to protect it. It would have been all developed. I mean, you see houses here, but to have half of the land area of this county protected, it's in national parks, it's in watershed districts, open space, state parks, and other holdings. It's incredible. And I have to say, when I get up and I look at Mount Tam, I look up at Loma Alta, that's the hill behind me, the fire roads, the trails that are there, but the houses aren't, the development is not. The hillock I'm standing on now would be great for a mansion. It's not there, those buildings aren't there because people cared enough about Marin to protect it, to carve out a huge amount of land for all of us in the future. And I look at that and I think, what am I going to do today that will make a difference like that for people in the future? What can I contribute? And you know, to me, the message of Earth Day is really about waking up every day. It sounds corny, but waking up every day and thinking about something that's in the common good, something that's environmental, in other words, and seeing what you can do to advance it, to protect it, to establish it, the common good. You know, as you look back, like I do, at the environmental movement and where we are now, there's an awful lot to be proud of. We did put those laws and regulations in place. We saved, my colleagues and I, we saved wilderness areas. The Wilderness Act was, put in place in 1960. An incredible accomplishment for American conservation. The Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, President Nixon signed the order that established the Environmental Protection Agency and brought from across the federal government and disparate agencies one major agency with the authority to protect air and water and land. Incredible accomplishments. We also know that we're not really pursuing at the level we should the kind of protection that the environment and human health needs. And I'm not just talking about this administration. We were off track and have been off track for decades, not passing enough protective laws to advance what we gained in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s. We're just not passing laws anymore that protect the environment. We're not very good about getting regulations out the door that are really protective. So that feels like important work undone, and it's hard to see until we get a major change in the atmosphere in Washington and out across the country. It's hard to see how that's going to improve. But so many things have improved. Back when I was starting out as a lobbyist in the 1970s, working in Washington, writing research papers and publications on the connection between agriculture and the environment, which is really how EWG got started. To me, it was very clear that public policy was going to advance, and right-thinking people in bipartisan spirit were going to put new laws on the books. But the industry's immune system kicked in, and it's been very powerful and difficult to overcome it, to advance environmental protections. And we need that. We need to update the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act. We're trying to struggle to regulate global warming gases using the Clean Air Act that was passed decades ago because we weren't able to modernize it in the early 2000s. On the other hand, the changes that have come about that have nothing much to do with government have been extraordinary. We don't require that people eat organic food now, but organic agriculture and the food system is above $50 billion in commerce now. You could hardly find it, organic food. And when you did find it, it was in a little co-op somewhere, and you went to the vegetable aisle and you didn't know if the vegetables had been harvested or if maybe they'd made an escape from the farm they were raised. But now a $50 billion industry, it's still a small fraction of the whole food supply, but it's growing. threatening to conventional agriculture and food systems because there's no additives to speak of like there are in conventional. The pesticide levels are extremely low because toxic pesticides, the worst ones, aren't even allowed. No GMOs. And that industry has come up dramatically in the past 15 years. That's a positive sign. Look at the energy world. Right below where we live, above my son's school, is a massive array of solar panels. It's been there for a long time. And all over the country, solar, wind, battery storage is revolutionizing. Let me wipe that tear away. How we generate electricity in this country. And it's a big threat to the conventional powers that be, the utility industry, that wants centralized power production and they want control. That's how they make their profits. All manner of consumer sectors, personal care, EWG's pioneering work to clean up the personal care market, adding our EWG Verified program now that certifies products to very high EWG standards. We're up against 1,700 or so products and climbing in that program. The cleaning product world is also cleaning up its act. Everywhere you look, you see the power of consumers driven and connected by the internet making a big difference in the kind of products that we have, the kind of processes that produce them. So much more work to do. So much more work to do. But that's very positive. I tell young folks when I talk to them now about their careers that when I came up, I wanted to be Ralph Nader. And Ralph Nader did some amazing things. He was my hero. When he came to the University of Missouri in the 1970s and I had a chance to escort him around a little bit, it was life-changing for me. But today there are other options. Public interest, public service are still great callings, and I would encourage anyone to look at that. But the business sector now, the business sector is a way to think about making a career protecting the environment. You can get things done in many cases faster and deeper by working in a company than you can by trying to lobby Capitol Hill. So I wanted to bring you up here to a place that's special to me on Earth Day. I wish the 450 of us who normally gather this evening in San Francisco for the EWG Earth dinner, I wish we could do that this year, but we can't. This virus has knocked everyone for a loop, right? Deb and I wake up every morning and we think how lucky we are that we're not dealing with the illness itself, at least not yet. It'll make its way maybe to our doorstep. It's made its way from Wuhan, from a bat cave, all the way here in a matter of months. So we're on guard about that. And we're not experiencing the deep economic deprivation, the tragedy that so many of our fellow Americans are experiencing. But this is an environmental crisis, right? This is an infectious agent that's made its way around the globe. And we have no environmental measures that we predicted that would prevent it. We have no medicine. We have no therapy for it that we know for sure works. We're just getting some breakthroughs there. We have no vaccine against it yet. So everything we can do is environmental in nature to protect ourselves. Wash our hands, social distancing, use disinfectants, put on a mask, put on gloves, environmental steps to protect ourselves and our families and our communities. So for this Earth Day, my feeling is that the Earth is sending us a powerful message. Don't forget how intimately we are engaged with the natural world in ways we don't even think about most of the time. Don't forget that we can do a lot to protect ourselves day in and day out, not just from the coronavirus and COVID-19. We can protect ourselves from toxic chemicals, pollutants, unnecessary contaminants in food, ingredients that are sketchy. We have the power to do that, and the internet, and I hope you feel sources like EWG can serve as a guide. So I just wanted to wish you a happy Earth Day. I'm going to celebrate it today with my family. I hope you can celebrate it too. We're not having the big gatherings that are always so inspiring. We can't this year. We have to protect ourselves and protect the planet. So that means that we're together in isolation. I wish you a very happy 50th anniversary of Earth Day. Please feel some of the joy that the planet is bringing us now. Look past this COVID-19 crisis. Look past the things we haven't gotten done. Get outside if you can. Enjoy the environment. Enjoy your family. And recognize just how incredibly precious it is that we live on this crazy blue orb in the middle of black space. And I hope that I'll see you soon in person and we can shake hands, maybe hug, and celebrate together. Now, I didn't bring a full dinner like I usually do on Earth Day to you, but I have a banana and a Cliff Bar, so I'm going to have some of that now.